All right, everybody, welcome. This is Lars Light from the Somm Journal, and on behalf of the Somm Foundation and National Geographic, the publishers of the New Sotheby's Wine Encyclopedia, I'd like to welcome you to our Winery Close-Up educational series and our latest installment, Big Reds, Old World versus New World, to a certain extent. It's not a huge competition, but achieving a full-bodied red always seems to be a point of pride for winemakers. What does that mean to any given winemaker, especially in the Old World versus the New World? Does it mean big and brawny and bodacious, or does it mean broad-shouldered and breathtaking? So we're about to explore those subtle differences with 6 different producers, evenly split on either side of the pond. I just want to let everybody know, in terms of housekeeping, this is being recorded. The session, it will appear on sommjournal.com as well as sommfoundation.com, and we're also live right now on Facebook Live on the Somm Journal platform. There will be a printed recap of this webinar and its theme in the December-January issue of Somm Journal. So if you don't already subscribe, please let us know, lars@sommjournal.com. We'd be happy to send anybody in the trade a subscription. And of course, we also have our digital editions. So a lot of incentives, not only the great educational material we're going to get here today, but there are some other really cool incentives thanks to our collaboration with the Somm Foundation. And we have Lynn Fletcher of the Somm Foundation here to tell us about the incentives that will really make you pay attention, I promise. Hey, Lynn.
Hi, Lars. Thank you. So first off, just want to say thank you to you and all the panelists and to Somm Journal for making these opportunities possible. We really appreciate it. So in the next couple days, we'll do a random drawing of all the participants today on the webinar, and we're going to give away 8 accesses to Somm Geo for a full year. So look forward to that. And then we also have a major competition. So this is a grand award session. We are giving away $1,000 scholarship to the top essay winner of this competition. So by Friday, everybody on this webinar will receive a prompt via email from info@sommfoundation.com with what the essay is to be about. You'll be given until October 25th to complete your essay, up to 1,000 words. And the top 2 winners will get a copy of the New Sotheby's Wine Encyclopedia, and first place gets a check for $1,000. And keep in mind that this essay competition, unlike the other ones before it, is going to combine elements from multiple different webinars that we've done over the last 6 months. So if you weren't able to see all of them, please go to sommjournal.com or sommfoundation.com and watch the old webinars so that you have the best chance possible of getting that $1,000. And good luck to you, and I'll pass it back to Lars.
$1,000. That's a really good rate for writing an essay. I got to tell you, Lynn, thank you for that. And we also want to say thank you to Somm Geo, which I always like to compare. Greg is probably sick of hearing this now, but I like to say it's Google Earth meets wine country. With us today is Greg von Wagner, longtime Somm at Jimmy's and the mastermind behind this incredible in-depth program, Somm Geo. Greg, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lars. It's great to be here, and thank you to all the winemakers and participants on the day. It's a pretty exciting group of wineries, and I'm excited to take you through them. So the Somm Geo tour that you'll see today, it's part of a larger program that has all the world's notable wine regions represented, along with deep level wine theory behind each, and also over 100 printable and downloadable high-res maps. And that's available for donors to the Somm Foundation. And if you want to follow along with today's tour, each frame is completely interactive. It's on the Somm Foundation website under virtual enrichment trips, and I'll post a link to that. But today we're doing a tour of the big reds of the world. So we are going to head over between worlds. So we're going to start in the United States, in California, where 3 of our producers are. Here we have Napa, one of the classic wine regions for great Cabernet Sauvignon, right at the top of San Francisco, and headed down the coast. We will go to Monterey, where a little bit further inland, we get great temperature for these, kind of fuller-bodied, lusher styles. Headed to Paso, great limestone soils sitting there right on the western edge. We have Justin, kind of at the base of the Santa Lucia Mountains. We'll head over to Portugal, in the Douro Valley, a classic there. Over to Rioja, great region, full-bodied, but a ton of variety there. The one that we're talking about today is going to be a fuller-bodied blend that's coming from Marquez de Riscal. Then over to Sartori, where we're talking a Pasamento, given the texture, bringing on that kind of fuller-bodied, textural big component to those Amarone wines. But we're going to kick it off in California. Here we are in the North Coast. We have San Francisco once again, Napa, Sonoma side by side, right at the top of the San Pablo Bay. In this next frame, you see all of our AVAs lined up all the way headed up the valley. To the west side, we have Mount Veeder in the Mayacamas range. To the east side, we have the Vaca Mountains, where we have Susquehanna Ranch, down more towards the southern part, but in the Vaca range, where we'll be talking about today. But we're headed to Cakebread and the winery actually in Rutherford. I think this is really incredible having a history that goes back to the 1970s, because they now have over 1,600 acres of estate vineyards, mostly in Napa and then some in Anderson, and about 600 of that's under vine, which, in Napa is a huge benefit to have that many owned estate vineyards. And here we have, this is Susquehanna Ranch, but a beautiful shot. And I'm excited to check out the wines, and I'll hand it back over to Lars.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Greg. So kicking off this tour de force, we have Stephanie Jacobs, who is winemaker for Cakebread with her Susquehanna Springs Cabernet Sauvignon. Stephanie joined Cakebread in 2004. In 2012, she became the winery's project leader for Pinot Noir, and in 2017 became only the 4th winemaker in Cakebread history. That's pretty impressive. She works very diligently with the Cakebread family to preserve their fruit-forward, food-friendly style of wines that they take great pride in. And matter of fact, you can read more about her and Cakebread as the cover story for the December 2021 issue of the Somm Journal. We're looking forward to that. So Stephanie, welcome, and tell us a little bit about the terroir of Susquehanna Springs, how it's different than the Valley, Benchlands, and other Napa sub-AVAs, and what do you do differently with this varietal to bring out some of the expression of it?
Well, good morning, Lars. Thank you for having me. At least it's morning in California. I'm not sure everybody else is, but let's see if I can get my screen to share here.
Go.
There we go. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
It's just a little bit off center for some reason. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Maybe I'll stop and try again here.
Okay.
All right.
It's like all the IT guys said, did you reboot? Did you reset it?
I know. Let's see. Okay. Is that
That's better? Great, much better.
Now I can't advance the slide. Which one? It's not working. Oh, there it goes.
Fantastic.
Okay. Oh. All right, so a little bit of history about Cakebread Cellars. As Greg mentioned, we're started in the 70s. Jack and Dolores, our founders, purchased the property in 1972. And our first vintage was 1973 Chardonnay from Napa Valley. We've quickly grown into owning about 16 different vineyards all the way throughout Napa Valley and in Anderson Valley, where we have some Pinot Noir and Mendocino. He also mentioned that I was the 4th winemaker. So Jack was obviously our first winemaker, and our second winemaker was Bruce Cakebread, followed by Julianne Lax, who I've had the pleasure of working with for the last 15 years now, before she is retired and I took over for her. Let's see, as mentioned before, we make food-friendly wines. Dolores has created a nice culinary program for us, and so we do have our own vegetable garden, and so all of our wines are made to go very well with food. let's see, we are currently run by Bruce Cakebread and Dennis Cakebread, the brothers. So we're still family owned and operated. So there are 16 properties throughout Napa Valley and the 2 in Anderson Valley, which are Pinot Noir. The Susquehanna Springs property is on the southern end of the Vaca Mountain Range. We have 3 properties on the Vaca Mountain Range. We have our Dancing Bear property in Howell Mountain, which is on the north side. And in the middle, we have our Dogwood Vineyard. And then on the south end, we have our Susquehanna Springs property. The Susquehanna Springs property is actually made up of 3 different vineyards that are consecutive parcels. The first one was planted in 2007, which is the original Susquehanna Springs vineyard. Next to it, we have the Arroyo Creek Vineyard, which was planted in 2009. And then adjacent to those 2 vineyards is our Susquehanna Mountain property, which was planted in 2016, 17, and a little bit of 18. So we've just kind of kept on adding on to the region over the years. The elevation ranges from 500 feet down in the Arroyo Creek Vineyard, all the way up until about 1,364 feet at the very highest point of Susquehanna Mountain. I had to check that myself on Friday. I was up there in the sun on the bottom part of the vineyard and then went all the way up to the very top, and I was already in the fog and it was wet and not exactly what I was expecting. So of course I Google Earthed it and found out exactly how high I was and what I was looking at. It was very cold up there and foggy. So we are still actually picking fruit up there, waiting for it to get a little bit ripe, but which is the main difference between all the properties on the Vaca Mountain Range. So at Howell Mountain, it's much warmer, similar mountain fruit elevation. It's very rocky soils, but we end up picking that in the middle of September. It ripens much earlier versus our Susquehanna Spring property, which we don't start picking until the first week of October. And as I mentioned, now we're still ticking away at it a little bit. It's a much cooler site, very rocky site. There's a little bit more bale loam clay in the Arroyo Creek side, which is a lower elevation. And as we go up in elevation, it gets more and more rocky. It's very volcanic soils. Let's see here. I think there's a picture of the soil on the next slide. So that bottom picture on the left, you can kind of see all of the rock and the volcanic soil. There's not a lot of soil up there, but it does produce very concentrated fruit. Being a cooler site, we have a lot of fresh acidity in the fruit, which is very different from the northern end of the valley. We have a little bit less acidity, but still concentrated fruit. Lots of firm tannic structure, very small berries, which is where we get our color and our nice concentrated flavors. Let's see. I'm trying to keep this. The upper picture, you get a little bit of the Arroyo Creek side and the Susquehanna Spring side. And as you go up, you get a little bit of the Susquehanna Mountain, but it's a little bit hard to see. So the whole property in itself is 700 acres in total, but we only have 175 acres planted. The rest of it is oak forests and rangelands, lots of different aspects and slopes. So the east facing slopes, we planted Sauvignon Blanc. The west facing slopes, we planted Cabernet. And then the in-between slopes, we've planted Merlot and Cab Franc too. So, let's see. I think that's good. So the Susquehanna Springs Cabernet, this is our first vintage of Susquehanna Springs Cabernet. 85% Cabernet, 15% Merlot. Lots of bright fruit concentration, nice fresh blackberry, lots of fresh boysenberry, nice tension and structure from the acidity and the firm tannins that we get from the rocky soils. We do age it 22 months in French oak barrels. Little bit of floral component to this wine, which I think makes this site unique. There's a common thread. So we also make a Merlot from this site and a Cabernet Franc, and throughout the entire site, there's a little bit of a floral consistency to all of the wines and the fruits there. Any questions?
All right, cool. That's awesome. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Appreciate that. Looking great. I'm just going to ask you to take your
Okay.
screen down. Thank you. So next up is David Nagingast, who's the VP of winemaking. I hope I said that right. At Scheid Vineyards, presenting his VDR proprietary red blend. Dave is an experienced winemaker, joined Scheid in 2002, and is now guardian of the beautiful estate fruit and its expression of Monterey's unique regional character. Fun fact, Dave is known for his calm and collect, but he was also a discus thrower in college, a tradition followed by his three sons. So tell us, Dave, cool collected guy in a cool climate making big red wine. Tell us how that comes about.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here to talk about our wine, the VDR it's called. Oh, excuse me. So it's a VDR, very dark red. And just a little bit about the Scheid family. It started by Al Scheid in 1972, and for the first 30 years, they produced only quality wine grapes that they sold to other wineries. And it's now run by Al Scheid still, and his son Scott and his daughter Heidi. The company hired me in 2002 as a winemaker to work with the vineyard staff, make the wine, and help design the state-of-the-art winery here in Greenfield, which is centrally located to the Salinas Valley and to all of our, at the time, 11 different ranches up and down the valley. So we built the winery in 2005, and where we produced the VDR, along with several other brands from all our vineyards. So Haines Valley is the most southernmost part of the Salinas Valley. And the story about the VDR wine is in Haines Valley Vineyard is the climate. Most people, as you said, consider Monterey a cool area best suited for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but this is and this is true for the north part region of the valley. But going south, there is less influence from the Monterey Bay, and we can get very hot days over 100 degrees, but the nights cool down to a good 50 degrees, down to the mid 50s at night. So there's a big range, and this gives the vines a chance to rest at night. This allows us to ripen the fruit and get extended hang time out there so that the tannins are able to ripen more and soften up a little bit and become a little bit less bitter. But the flavors continue to get more intense. So the sunny weather, hot sunny weather, is ideally suited for these varieties like Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot. And these wines are truly made out in the vineyard. And I've always been impressed since I've been working with this, how well those two varieties do in that Haines Valley vineyard.
Hey, Dave, I'm gonna stop you for 1 second because I forgot to ask Greg to give us an overview, which I think would be really helpful. So I'm gonna stop your time right now and just ask Greg to jump in, please, and give us that overview that I should have asked you for 2 minutes ago.
Not a worry, not a worry. Dave, do you mind if I take over the share screen just real quick? We'll run through everything.
Great.
Location wise.
All yours.
So this is, and 100%, you can really see it here as we're getting further inland, but we're headed down the coast of California. Here we have the Monterey Bay, which is actually 2 miles deep and about 60 miles wide, but it's pretty rare that you really see such a deep body of cool water that close into the coast. And so that makes this area up towards the north here in Monterey very conducive to, Burgundy varieties, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But as you then go south, really kind of more southeast, you get into this area that's great for these big, textured, full-bodied reds, and they can really thrive there, which, makes sense when you're talking a region that's, what is this, 130 kilometers from side to side. It's about 80 miles. So it makes sense that there's, really a huge amount of versatility within the valley. And then as we go down, you'll see kind of these AVAs spelled out a little bit here. With the Hams Valley Vineyard, the San Lucas Vineyard, and these warmer spots that are definitely conducive towards red varieties. And then the family winery just by Greenfield, also pretty amazing, has a history back to the 1970s. And they're making some stellar wines, and we'll pop right back over.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Greg. All right, Dave, I'll let you bring it back in now that we've got that context.
All right, very good. Thank you. So along with those varieties that grow real well down in Hames Valley, we also we also blend in Cabernet Sauvignon from the San Lucas AVA. So the Hames Valley is considered a region 4 on the Winkler scale. So it's a warmer climate area, and the San Lucas is closer to a region 3. So it's ideal for really ripe, fruity Cabernet Sauvignon. So the idea for the VDR was to produce a wine that it was big, bold wine that had a lot of impact, and it's approachable, it's smooth, and so we have a little bit of residual sugar that helps round out and polish the finish. So the wine we're discussing today is the VDR. It's called a very dark red. So it's a non-traditional blend of Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And these varieties are respected for their deep color, concentrated flavors, and power, structure, and length. So this wine is bold, it has intense color and richness. Petit Syrah kind of adds a spicy aromatic and fruity flavor component. The Petit Verdot adds structure and color, rich depth of color, along with some traditional fruit characters. And then the Cabernet Sauvignon adds more traditional color, dark fruits like blueberry, cherry, cassis. And what makes this wine work is that these varieties come together. They complement each other really well. They come together to make a deep, dark, full-bodied red wine with spicy aromatics of the Petit Syrah, but the classic black fruit flavors of Petit Verdot and Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's got a bold structure with a smooth finish that just continues on. So in order to extract as much color as we can get, we're using the big, bold varietals, and we can leave them on the skins for an extended 2 or 3 weeks after the wine goes dry to really concentrate up those fruit flavors. The wine is aged in a mixture of French, American, and Hungarian oak to give it a little bit of complexity. So it's a big wine with 15% alcohol, and so it's a big, bold wine. And on the back label, it highlights the Scheid's family's commitment to sustainability. We've been farming our vineyard sustainability, certified sustainable for several years, along with the winery facilities are certified sustainable. In fact, we're moving to 100% organic in the vineyards. And we are 100% powered by a wind turbine. Today is a especially good example. If you were here, you'd see the wind was really blowing down the valley from the bay throughout the valley. And so those are some of the sustainable aspects of the commitment that the Scheids have to sustainable practices. So so the BDR, you can see it. It has a rich and deep garnet color. It has those aromatics of black cherry, blackberry, boysenberry, some blueberry, and just some hints of lavender. The flavors of bean cherry and pomegranate are fairly intense, and then it finishes a smooth and rich with some mocha, black tea, and some vanilla from all that the oak components. So that's the VDR.
Beautiful wine. I got to tell you, it's there's nothing petite about those two varieties, and that's really cool seeing them together in a blend. And the wine is super silky, real smooth. That's very beautiful. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
All right. So Greg, where are we going next on this tour de force?
Yeah, so we are headed down the coast of California to Paso Robles. We are really right about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco in the overarching Central Coast AVA. And now one thing that's really interesting with Paso, and there's really quite a bit to talk about, but in 2014, 11 AVAs came online to really differentiate the different areas. And a lot of that is because of this effect. So these are the Santa Lucia range. And so you get all this cool air coming in from the Pacific that's then forced up over these hills. And you can see a great shot of the range right there that go up to right about 4,000 feet or so. And that air gets forced up and it actually turns into rain, making the western side a little bit rainier, a little bit cooler, definitely because of the Pacific Ocean influence. And quite a bit too can get through this area called the Templeton Gap, which is, not necessarily a specific point, but a series of lower lying hills. And so all that basically means that you have the western side of Paso, which is rainier, it's cooler, and throughout the AVA, you have these great diurnal temperature shifts. We're going to Justin Vineyards over on the far west side. Another thing I'm sure Joseph will talk to, we have really unique limestone soils, which you really don't see all that often in American wine regions. Here we have a great shot of the winery, and back to Lars for more.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. It is my honor to introduce Joe Spellman, MS, National Spokesperson for Justin Vineyards of Paso, and he's presenting his isosceles today. Joe became America's 29th Master Sommelier in 1996. Sorry to date you, Joe, but he's had years of experience on the floors of some of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants, not to mention a very happy Chicago baseball fan these days, eagerly awaiting today's game shortly. And see if Houston, see if the Sox can tie up the series against Houston. We'll also see what happens in California tonight if the Dodgers can tie it up. So, Joe, Paso is known for a lot of sunshine. It gives you a lot of phenols. What are the challenges of making a big red wine in a relatively dry coastal region? You've got limited water sources, especially in drought years. Oh, you're on mute, Joe.
Whoop, sorry, I thought I did it.
Good.
Thank you, Lars, and thank you, Greg, for that great presentation. I'll amplify a little bit of what you said in a moment, and I'll quickly answer Lars's question about water management, and I'll show you in a diagram how that is beneficial for us to be on largely, but not exclusively, the west side with our multiple estates, and how water movement as well as wind movement are beneficial for moderating our overall climate through the growing season. But the main thing has to do with the rocks. And Greg referenced that limestone works like a sponge, and we're able to hold water underground, which then, of course, the vines can dig for, so to speak, and pull up during the course of the growing season, benefited by what we've heard before, I think a couple of times, the diurnal shift that's quite broad when you're not far from the Pacific Ocean. So I'll set up my little deck here, and we'll see if we can amplify some of those ideas. Of course, Justin Baldwin was our founder, acquired the land in 1981 with the goal to making Bordeaux-style wine. Now, we think of Bordeaux as big wine these days, and a lot of it is. But the original idea of Bordeaux, frankly, was to be a little more elegant than a lot of the wines that were coming out of France at the time. That's why it was called Claret, or Claret originally, and Claret by the British. It's kind of an unusual and inverted factoid. But these days, the way we make Bordeaux varieties in California and largely the rest of the world is in the pretty big style. And we're able to extract great color in spite of the fact that limestone tends not to be very promotive of high color in our skins because we're fairly low in potassium, which is interesting, and has an effect on holding acidity but limiting tannins, and also giving us pretty solid color. So that's our property, as you can see there, set among some of those live oaks that give the region its name. Isosceles is our most famous wine. It's gained the most accolades over the years. And we're now part of the wonderful company, very proud to have developed quite a few new vineyards under the Resnick's guidance these last few years. We have to advance this down here. Another piece of geography is very important in California is the San Andreas Fault. And I drew this from a Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance presentation. And I think it's really important to show and note that almost all of Paso Robles and a lot of the Central Coast, in fact, is west of the San Andreas Fault, meaning it is largely built on the Pacific Ocean plate, which has been crashing into the North American plate for, I don't know, 100 and some million years or so, and causing things like earthquakes, very famous one at Partfield in 2003, one not far from Justin in San Simeon, actually in 2004. Both of these are very important events in the last 20 years, and they will continue as this fault continues this pressure north from the Pacific Ocean plate and southward from the North American plate. And it creates a lot of interesting geology because most of what we have is old seabed. And again, what the plate looks like in this color-coded map of soils kind of shows us how almost all this is sedimentary soil as opposed to volcanic soil. There are some volcanics to the east, but not too much to the west. And Paso Robles roughly superimposed here. Part of it does hit the fault zone. And as you can see in the west, we overlap Lake Nacimiento, just south of the Monterey and San Benito County line, within which the entire appellation exists. In fact, conveniently appellated within the county, but in fact probably does share a lot of features that we talked about in southern Monterey. But Paso Robles is itself quite a large AVA, and we'll get to that in a moment as we talk about the subzones. And again, that was mentioned earlier. Our most prominent properties, the majority of our properties, some of which are still in redevelopment, are in the Adelaide district, the westernmost part of Paso Robles. We also have developed properties in El Pomar and in the Geneseo district. These are a little bit farther east. We find value actually in fruit from all over the region, but to Greg's earlier point, it is much cooler near the Santa Lucias. We're much higher elevated. We have broader diurnal shift and frankly, more moisture too. So all those are big advantages in the west side of Paso. So there's three properties that you saw in his presentation are actually all under our ownership, with the Justin estate starting in 81, Debro, which was acquired in 2011, and some of it redeveloped, and Carmi McKnight, our immediate neighbor, which was just purchased and redeveloped in the past year. Likewise, just down the road, the Star Ranch and Runway properties we have sourced from for years and continue to build on that history and legacy. Our probably most interesting and intense property for grape growing is the Adelaide Road Estate, just a bit to the south of us, very close to other top properties like Halter Ranch and Tablas Creek. It sits a little bit higher, up to 1,800 feet in elevation, whereas the original Justin estate, the highest point is about 1,500 feet. And then the Creston Road Estate out in El Pomar, much lower lying, much more clay soil driven. And again, what we have is this great diurnal shift, lots of elevation, calcareous property of our soil, and holding that water underground is very valuable. Through the growing season, it means we minimally irrigate. In fact, we dry farm many parcels of our properties. We have built a second facility in East Paso that is more centrally located, and we, again, do source from 8 of the 11 sub-AVAs within Paso. We are a SIP certified winery that is sustainable in practice, and that relates to water management, no chemicals in the soil, rejuvenation of the land, and so forth. And what I mentioned earlier about moisture, it's very important to understand how prevailing winds coming across the Santa Lucias do bring a lot more moisture to West Paso than to the rest of the region. A lot of this isn't felt as direct precipitation. Most of it does occur over winter, but it's very important for the long term of the growing season because the Adelaide Hills, which is about the location where we are at some elevation here, just inside those highest peaks of the Santa Lucias, well, that's 35 to 45 annual inches of rainfall compared to well out east, 8 to 10 inches out near Shandon, and sometimes even less. It can be quite a desert. So I think Paso Robles has a mistaken reputation as a very warm zone. In fact, it is warm as you measure degree days relatively, but it's not as warm as the Napa Valley floor, for instance, especially out in the west. And we also, I think, can prove that with the degree days region by region, whether that's Adelaide to the south, Willow Creek, down near Templeton, even down at the Santa Marita Ranch and toward El Palmar. This is region 2, at best region 3. The warmer regions, of course, north and east. And these wind flows shown by these arrows, whether it's the Gap region, the Salinas Valley, which brings air down, weakening as it comes down through Monterey, and the Cuesta Grade, are all sources of cool air that moderates what we do. So we get really great styles of fruit, primarily Cabernet Sauvignon. That's what the region grows the most of. The old traditions of Zinfandel have subsided significantly, and the whole Rhone operations, which we participate in, are really small compared to the Bordeaux varieties. So a lot of the East is alluvial soils. I'm not going to get into every single region here, but do want to point out how we have what we call bedrock and colluvial soils on the downslopes from the Santa Lucia range. And those are really valuable because they provide this calcareous rock underneath underground with relatively low potassium. And that, in combination with the silica soils, is what we see most of out east. Clay, sandy loam, out west. Clay and sandy loam valuable to our eastern growers. That is our property from its highest point, looking to Fog Bank, coming over the Santa Lucias.
Right.
Also a great source of refreshment for the vineyard during the growing season. And that is a photo I took from an airplane about 12 years ago of the original property. Looking down to the east, you see how sunlight has affected these hillsides and how our vineyards kind of roll along the terrain in the hillsides. Being on hillsides helps limit yield. Everything is done by hand on property, and we do keep a very strong integrated pest management program, as well as managing our vineyards with composts and, again, no chemical inputs. So the wine certainly is our most famous wine. We mature this in new French barrels, about 21 months on average. Generally, a 3-sided wine, get it, isosceles, with the supporting varieties of Merlot and Cabernet Franc typically about equal. This vintage was 9% Merlot, 8% Cabernet Franc. Very powerful wine in terms of richness, color, depth, fruit, not mega tannic. And I think that's often what is thought of as being one piece of big red wine, the other being alcohol. And we're not shy with that. We are often well over 15% alcohol. And I think that's been a great hit in the steakhouse world and among connoisseurs worldwide. So we're very proud to present 2018 Isosceles, continuing our traditions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate that. Very classic to wrap up our New World session. And now we're going to take a look at the New World, or the Old World, rather. Greg, you ready to take the leap across the pond?
Absolutely. So we are headed across the Atlantic to Portugal. Really fascinating country, and I really think that there's never been a better time to drink Portuguese wine.
Yeah,
we are in the northern section. So I'll point out just down in the south, we have Lisbon. Then as we head up north, just south of Galicia in Spain, we have the major city of Portugal, that's Porto. And then up a little bit, we have the Douro River Valley. Now, when we get into the Douro, a big thing is that, if you'll notice, you'll see this Vinho Verde right next close to the Atlantic Ocean. Well, a lot of that influence hits the Serra de Montemuro as well as the Serra do Moral, and subsequently inland Portugal gets much drier, it gets much warmer than Vinho Verde. And here we have, these are the 3 subzones of the Douro Valley. We've got the Baixo Corgo, the Cima Corgo, and the Douro Superior. And as you go up the Douro River, that definitely gets, it gets drier, more continental. And then when you're down closer to the Baixo, it's a touch rainier, a touch cooler, but really, really incredible place. And the Douro Valley, as with the rest of Portugal, has always focused on indigenous varieties. So they have well over 300 within the country. And I say well over because I'm sure there's more. And really focus on them. They always take a front seat. There's very little international varieties within the country. So here we go, just in the Cima Corgo, but close to the border of the Baixo. We have Quinta do Mercis, just a really, really beautiful estate. If you haven't been to the Douro, I would put it very top of your list. Stunning area, steep hillsides, really just an incredible country, and make some really incredible wines here. Here you can see a great shot of the estate, and I'll hand it back over to Lars to hear more.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Greg. So with us now is Frank Paradis, who is the president of Now Imports. Frank grew up in Newark, New Jersey, not far from me. Portuguese American community, has great food and wine. I've enjoyed it there many times. Frank went from running his family's neighborhood wine shop to making it an important source of Portugal's greatest wines, then brought his expertise to an importer level. And now he runs the Espero group. And Frank, you're going to have to school us both on a lot of these correct pronunciations. Portuguese can be very complex, not only in its grape varietals, but in its pronunciation. But your group is one of Portugal's most dynamic and progressive producers and importers. So looking forward to hearing more about that and how you deal with the complexities of Portugal and make this great big red wine. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Lars, and the Somm Journal. Thank you, Greg, for an absolutely fantastic introduction, and to the rest of the esteemed panelists. So real quick, Quinta dos Morsas, as Greg mentioned, is located in the northwest of Portugal. So Esperão as the group that I currently manage here in the United States was founded in 1973 by Dr. José Roquette when he acquired the Herdado Esperão property that dates back to 1267 in the Reguengos de Monserrat subregion. And we have been able to grow our business since then. And in 2008, we had moved into the Douro region in with the acquisition of Quinta dos Morsas. And the goal has always been and continues to be for the current 8 members of the family of the first and second generation managing Esperão is to become the largest producer of organic wines in the world. And we're currently 100% certified organic at all of our estates, which is over 643 hectares of vineyard. So as I said, in 2008, we entered into the Douro Valley with the acquisition of Quinta dos Morsas, an estate with over 2 centuries of history that's located right in the heart of the region, really in the Cima Corgo, but many of our vineyards actually touch and go into the Baixa Corgo that Greg mentioned earlier. Shortly after acquiring the estate, we hired a gentleman named José Luís Moreira da Silva to head up the project. He had experience prior to at Casa Ferreira working on brands like Barca Velha and working with Duorum, another prominent Douro producer. So since roughly 2013, Zé Luís has been running the Quinta dos Morsas project. And again, just a little bit more about the Douro, located in the northeastern section of Portugal. It is a region that has 2 DOCs inside of it. It has the Douro DOC as well as the Porto DOC. It was delineated in 1756, making it the world's oldest demarcated region. And whereas for a couple of centuries, it was known as the region where port wine came from. Today, roughly 50% of production is coming from Portuguese Douro DOC still wine, made from Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, Tinto Roriz, Tinta Amarela, Tinta Bedrock, and Suzão. There's white wine being made from the northern vineyards, the far northern vineyards, but predominantly it's still roughly 85% red, 15% white. So just to give you a little close-up of where we are, we're about an hour's drive from the city of Porto up. And as you see here, what we started to do shortly after taking over the property was we brought in a French viticultural team to do a number of soil studies throughout the entire property, and we parcelized the entire estate. And roughly the different colors just reflect the different parcels that we've designated inside of it that reflect the diversity of soils that we have on the property. We have 8 distinct soil types at the estate, schist being the predominant type of soil that we have, but we have numerous different types of schist at the estate. And then not only is it the soils that make it so distinct, it's also the elevation, the solar exposure, the terroir, the closeness to the river. And we currently produce 4 Douro DAC wines and 2 port wines from the estate. So verticality, Greg was mentioning earlier that if you have the chance to go to the Douro, I often tell people who haven't been there, the Douro is very much like the Grand Canyon, but with vineyards everywhere you can see, okay? And when you go to the Douro, you quickly realize that everything seems to be terraced. It's terraced. But when we went to the Douro in 2008, what we loved about Quinta das Murzas was that the previous owners of Quinta das Murzas, shortly after World War II, they had gone to Bordeaux and they had started to learn and to study a lot of the winemaking techniques that were happening there. And they came back and they realized that the terrace plantings weren't as efficient as they wanted them to be. So they planted everything vertically. So when this estate became available, the Roquette family seized upon it and they acquired it. And part of it is the vertical plantings allow for a higher number of vines to be planted per hectare, leading to more competition between the plants, allows for greater solar exposure, and allows for better aeration, which leads to healthier plants. So for us, and you're looking right now at the Reserva vineyard, the Reserva vineyard has that south to western exposure, allows for a much higher density. Elegance. What we liked so much about Quinta das Murzas is that it allowed us to build these beautiful, big, bold reds, but these big, bold reds that at the same time were elegant. And as Greg mentioned earlier, we have a number of vineyards which really are, some of them are in the Baixa Córdoba, and some of them buck up right next to the Baixa Córdoba. So he mentioned earlier that the Serra do Marão and the Miramonte. So those 2 mountain ranges ultimately, they divide the Douro from the Vinho Verde region. And what that separation means is that the Atlantic influence that comes in literally stops at the mountain range. So whereas the Douro, the Vinho Verde region will get a tremendous amount of rainfall, the Douro will not, okay? The Baixa Córdoba will get more rain, will get double the amount of rainfall than the Douro Superior, but it's still nothing compared to what happens in Vinho Verde. So here we get a little more rainier climate in the Baixa Córdoba. Our Cima Córdoba vineyards are much closer to the river, higher concentration. We're getting much richer fruit from it. And then we have the soil site types. So in this particular presentation, I wanted to present the mica schist, right? So mica schist is the soil that is predominant in the Reserva vineyards. So here it's really giving us more minerality. The mica schist is absorbing heat throughout the day. So when we get these huge diurnal shifts, that heat is letting off throughout the night. And as the heat lets off throughout the night, it really allows us to have a much more balanced maturation of the grapes throughout the growing season. Also said, shameless self-promotion here, also said that wines that are grown from vines in mica schist have significantly higher amounts of antioxidants and resveratrol. So obviously, the more you drink of Quinta das Murzas Reserva, the healthier and the longer you will live. It's a fact. I can attest to it. And then with lagares, right? So we foot tread everything inside of lagares, and I just wanted to touch upon this a little bit because, they say in the Douro that you have 3 months of winter and 9 months of hell. Okay, the spring, the summer, the autumn is brutal. The heat is absolutely brutal. So, canopy management, everything comes into effect in terms of us making sure that we have as much health in the plant as possible, but we are yielding these incredibly high tannic varietals. And what we do is we foot tread them in the lagares Each lagar holds roughly 7 to 8 tons. We're foot treading with 7 people every 4 hours for the first 2 days. Prior to fermentation, we want to maximize extraction as much as possible. And then we want to get 8 days of skin contact on the skin. If we're making a vintage port, we're going to do the exact opposite. So if we're making a vintage port, we're going to double the amount of people we have foot treading in a lagar. We're going to maximize the extraction as much as possible, and we're going to minimize the skin contact. Our viticulture has been up until I say 2021 is when we were finally 100% certified organic at Quinta dos Morsas. So we have been doing integrated production farming practices up until this point. We still do that, but now all of our farming is certified organic. You know, many times people ask the questions, what are the big gaps or big differences between US organic and EU organics? US organics basically means no added sulfites. EU organics allows for up to 100 parts per million for dry reds, up to 150 parts per million of sulfites for dry whites. So
fascinating, Frank. We got to wrap it up though.
okay, so these are the varietals, multiple varietals, field plantings. Okay, we go into there. So Quinta dos Morsas Reserve of 2013. All right. Really is an estate wine. It's a field blend of multiple different varietals. Full bodied for us really means finding the balance between aromatics, fruit, tannin, acidity, and mouthfeel. It doesn't really mean being big or bold or bodacious. It's rather, you know, taking what nature provides us and presenting it to the consumer in as balanced a way as possible. So if you come visit us, and we hope you all do, that is the balcony at the guest house. You can sit out there, have some Dodo wines, some port, vintage port, and some cigars, and I hope to be sitting there with you when we do.
Amen. And you guaranteed me a long life. Will you guarantee me that my Portuguese pronunciation will get better?
It will with the more you drink. I can guarantee you that.
I believe it. Yeah, you don't speak fluent Portuguese, you speak fluid Portuguese after a certain point.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. So Greg, where's our next stop in the old world?
We are headed to Spain, and specifically within Spain, we're headed to Rioja. So here, if we zoom out a little bit, you can see where we're coming from, Portugal and northern Portugal specifically, and our 17 Aldeas of Spain. When we're headed to Rioja, we're about a 4 hours drive north of Madrid. So just south of Basque Country, and actually Basque Country juts a little bit into Rioja, the appellation. You'll see that in Rioja Alavesa. And you have both an influence from the Atlantic as well as the Mediterranean. And so you get a little bit from both bodies of water, and sometimes that influences changes. Over the course of any given season, you may get more Atlantic influence in a certain year and more Mediterranean influence in the next. Here we have Rioja, the appellation itself, split into 3 different subzones. We have Rioja Alta, Rioja Alavesa, and Rioja Oriental, which previously called Rioja Baja. But we're focusing right now up in these 2 subzones, Rioja Alta, and really more specifically in Alavesa. So I headed down Marqués de Riscal, truly amazing property. If you ever have a chance to go there, you'll see a photo of it in the next frame. Their hotel, designed by renowned architect Frank Gehry, really, really a sight to see. The wines as well, some of my favorite coming out of Spain nowadays, and you know, there's quite a bit of fun to be had. There's the wine itself, highly modern and really beautiful, and I'm excited to hear more.
Awesome. And we're going to hear more. Thank you from Jose Luis Mugiro Jr., 5th generation family proprietor of Marqués de Riscal, and he's be showing his reserva to us today. Jose worked at headquarters in Madrid after he finished his studies, and he's now based in Miami, but still works very closely with the home team to carry on production of authentic Rioja Alavesa. So Jose, welcome. Tell us more about authentic wines and how it's relevant in today's market for big red wines from Rioja.
First, I want to say thank you. Don't worry, I'm going to be fast. I know we're going to time. Don't worry about that. Thank you so much. I'm not actually the 5th generation, because the fifth generation is Paco Hurtado-Amézaga, who's still been the winemaker. So he came from the past, who is Guillermo Hurtado-Amézaga, who is like the person who created the winery back in 1858. I remember those wonderful days. Let me share the screen with you guys. So, so Marquesa Riscal, since I'm looking, how can I share this correctly? Marquesa Riscal is a winery that was founded in 1858. So we are one of the oldest wineries in Rioja. Okay. Wait, let me see. You can see my screen right now or not?
We can see your screen, not a presentation on it, but we see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, now.
There you
Yes.
go. Now you just got to bring it up to presenter mode and we're in good shape.
Actually, let me explain you something really
Perfect.
quick because it's a cool story. Do you know how we convinced Frank Gehry to build that wonderful hotel?
Oh, I can't wait to hear the story behind that.
Okay, that's the story. We are one of the oldest winery. We started making wine with Tempranillo since 1865, the first vintage. So we took Frank Gehry to the complex, to the winery. So he was a bit skeptical at the beginning because it's in a small town, the winery. But we have the best idea in the life. We opened a bottle of his year, 1929, and he
Brilliant.
was so happy. And he said, "How can I say no right now? Let's make this wonderful hotel." Thanks to that hotel, we used to have 7,000 visitors a year. Nowadays, you're more than welcome, Lars. You're more welcome, Greg, and everybody here. We have
Be there.
120,000 visitors. Not bad at all. So
I'll be there.
So as I say, it's one of the oldest one in Rioja. And let me tell you a little history about Riscal. So Guillermo Hurtado-Amézaga, as I say, found the winery, but it was actually his son, Camilo Hurtado-Amézaga, with Joan Pinot, who used to work in France, in Bordeaux, bring Joan Pinot to Rioja and establish the winery. So that's why when you come to Marquesa Riscal and you come and you see like the old building, like we built in 1858, you see like how the Bordeaux style we use. It's like, it's a complex, like it was built, like the buildings was built in Bordeaux. And also all the method we use, what's Bordeaux method style to make the wine. That was great because in 1895, it was the first winery, sorry, because my partners up north in France, but sometimes they hate us a little bit because we beat in many sports. So it was the first time, like in a blind tasting, Marquesa Riscal beat all the wines for Bordeaux. So we started being really popular. And in 1925, we created the of Rioja. Why? Because of Riscal, we were part of the wineries. They start making fraud with our wines. They start the restaurant refill the bottle with a cheaper wine because of that award. And we create the golden wire. That's why if you see a bottle of the classic Reserva, it's have a golden wire. We were pioneers in that. We create that to prevent the fraud. Okay, so if you see a bottle without the golden wire, don't trust what you're going to drink because probably it's not going to be Marquesa Riscal. All right. So as I say, we still believe in tradition. How many? So let's go forward. That's what I say. That's like the Diploma de Nord Bordeaux. What's so amazing? We still have that in the bottle, and that's the wonderful landscape of La Rioja. We start being a small winery nowadays. Let me put you in perspective. We sell wine in more than 120 countries. The main grape we use is Tempranillo, but we also mix with Graciana Mazuelo to give the wine more structure and complexity to the wine, okay? One of our identity is like the old vines we use. We have vines pre-phylloxeric that going over 110 years old vines. 500 hectares is our own property. The rest, we rent for the neighbors around. What I say we rent is like we pay every year money to them, but the people that have those vines, they're not allowed to touch anything. It's all under the control. What's the problem about that? The people, they want more money. Every single year, they ask for more money. But we want to keep bringing, you know, the best wines to the best people. That's why we only select the best plots of wine. Okay? So another thing we are going to bring right now, we are in a valley. We're surrounded, as you can see in the picture, by Sierra de Cantabria, and on the south by Sierra Cebollera. That means like we are in a valley, and we call like we're a miracle. We're in a perfect spot to create like the wine because we were protected with those two sierras that we call. All right. Also, another good thing about the hotel, guys, if you go to the hotel, you have a wonderful restaurant that have 1 Michelin star, and also for the ladies, there is or for guys, because I love that, there is a wonderful spa. And let me tell you something, I'm so proud to say We were nominated the second best vineyard in the world this year, the best vineyard in Europe. And the thing is, like, the first one was Zuccardi in Argentina. So the Gran Reserva, you have it, is 2012. It was a dry summer, but September rains a little bit. And the good thing is, it was a really good vintage. The grapes we use is hand-picked. We take the grapes, we don't use any machines, and we only select, we really pick about that, the best grapes. So we create a table selection of grapes to only select the best one, and the other one, take it away, because we want to keep the quality high. We believe, guys, in quality. We don't believe in quantity. That's really important. And we start being like that. Which how we use it? We use French oak for this Gran Reserva. For most of the wine, we use American oak for the Reserva and for the Marqués d'Arienzo Crianza. But for the Gran Reserva Madon de Chirel, my two babies here, who are like the high-end ones we have, we use French oak. With the French oak, you give more balance to the wine, more distinction, and also it's touch more of vanilla, toast, balsamic. So it's different. It's more expensive, as you know, like the American oak is about 3 times more expensive, but it's the best way you want to bring to the wine. And we use that oak, that French oak, to make that wine, you know, the special, and to bring like that cherry flavors and that full body. Because like my dad says, wine is to enjoy, and to enjoy with a revive with food. It's not to drink alone, or it's not to drink by themselves. I don't like that. I like to drink with my friends. I like to drink with my dates or whatever, and have a wonderful night with a wonderful glass of wine, Marqués de Riscal. And I hope today you're gonna have it, because it's today the Hispanic Day. It's the day of my country today. So I hope you're gonna enjoy my wine. And let me start. I think I'm good on time, so I'm gonna put a video of 1 minute about
Got 20 seconds left, man.
Okay, Gran Reserva. Enjoy, guys. All right, that's all. Thank you so much. I
Fantastic.
hope you enjoy, and hope to see you soon, guys.
That was a really good presentation. Thank you, Jose. So, Greg, we got one more stop to make in the old world. Where is it going to be?
All right, so we are headed over to Italy, and let's see, Jose, do you mind if I hop on the screen share?
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Your mother told you never to stop sharing, but you have to now.
I know. How can I do this? Leave, right?
Stop share. Don't
Oh,
leave.
Jose,
Should be up at the
Stop
top.
share. Now.
Head
Sorry,
up to
guys.
the
Now.
hotel.
We're good.
Perfect. So, all right. So yeah, we are headed over to northern Italy, specifically to the Veneto. And you know, when you're talking northern Italy, you know, by and large, you're talking about the foothills at the base of the Alps, where so many of these wine regions are. Here you can see the Po River Plain. A lot of that area is really, you know, more agriculture land. But these foothills at the base of the Alps are where a lot of the action as far as viticulture goes. And here we're headed specifically to Valpolicella. So we are just near Lake Garda. A lot of great wine regions surrounding that area. We have kind of the different subzones in Valpolicella, the Alassi, also the Est Valley or the East Valley, Valpentina. We're in Valpolicella Classico right now, where we have the 5 subzones. And here we make a wine with Corvina, Rondinella, and Molinara. And smaller quantities of lesser known grapes. And we'll be talking about the appassamento process. So really brings the texture, the concentration, and that's both in flavor as well as in alcohol, brings the richness. Here we have a lot of these verdant hillsides, really, really beautiful country. And the partially dried grapes, they're going to make their way into Amarone. And with that, over to Lars.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg. I haven't been to Amarone in, I don't know, the Valpolicella region in at least 2 weeks. I miss it. But we have Andreas Sartorio, who is president of Sartorio Winery and fourth generation of family proprietor. And he is presenting an Amarone to us today. Wrapping it up, I have to admit here, a little total disclosure. I've known for Andrea for at least 30 years, Andrea, right? We went to kindergarten together. That's why
I'm not that old.
Exactly. That's why we went to kindergarten together. Andrea spent a lot of time in the US for his studies and for work, which is where I like to think he picked up his Ohio accent. He's right now responsible for long-term vision of the company, which he often contemplates over a good cigar, be it Toscano or Cubano. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you, Lars. Thank you for the introductions. Let me share the screen right now. There we are. So the winery has been founded by my great-grandfather in 1898. And this is a picture I like particularly, other than seeing our roadmap to our 123 years beautiful journey. In this picture, you can see 3 generations of my family. The guy in the center with the mustache is my great-grandfather, Pietro, the founder, who was actually a restaurateur in Verona. The guy you see on the far right side holding a blonde baby is no less than Regolo Sartori, my grandfather, and holding my father, Pier Umberto. So this is 3 generations right there. Cool. Like I said, Pietro was a restaurateur, and he bought Villa Maria and vineyards in Negrar, which is the center of Policella Classica. And basically, his project was just to produce wine for the restaurants. And being very successful in doing that, Regolo, which unfortunately I never met because he died very young, he was only 54 and I never met him, was the one that had the vision that Sartori would become a wine family. So in 1947, we started to produce Amarone. And then in 1952, we started to expand to other markets rather than just the local market. When Regolo passed away, my dad was only 22 and my uncle was only 19. So we owe it to them because even at such a young, to such young guys, they could actually manage to bring Sartori to the next level until they both retire around the end of the 90s and my generations took over. So 1968 was actually our first shipments to United States with Banfi, where, you know, we've been together for more than 50 years. Now, of course, Banfi doesn't import other wines anymore, so we are now with Choros for United States. And in the beginning of the 80s, we started to look seriously to the Italian market, and we started to deal with also supermarket, not just with restaurants. In the 2000s, something happened that changed our life for good. I didn't like the model in Verona, which was mostly negociant. So we wanted to make sure we had control from grapes to bottle. And we did a joint ventures with a large co-op of farmers in the region that granted us full control from grapes to bottle and a lot of different projects that we have now access into the vineyards. In 2017, I had the honor and privilege to chair the Consorzio della Valpolicella. And in 2018, we celebrated our 120th anniversary. So this is briefly our story. This is where we are. We are in Veneto. Veneto is a very prolific region. Out of the 670,000 hectares of Italy, Veneto counts for about 100,000. And out of the 45 million hectoliters produced in Italy every year, 12 million hectoliters are done in Veneto. So we are very important for the wine scenario in Italy. Veneto has some of the most successful appellations worldwide, like Prosecco, Pinot Grigio, which is listed here. We have, of course, Amarone and Valpolicella and Soave. So we're very lucky because today's dates, Veneto is the most important region in terms of exports from Italy. Valpolicella is a very lucky and kissed, if you like, wine region. Reason why? Because the climate is very smooth. We have Lake Garda, which is a great protectors of the climate. We have a chain of mountains in the north part of Valpolicella, which is called Lessini. Also, Valpolicella is a beautiful variety of different situations of soils, microclimate, and styles because of all this difference into the 6 valleys that goes south to north into the Valpolicella. The main grapes that we have in the Valpolicella are Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella. Even if Corvina now and Corvinone are considered basically 80% of the blend. Reason why Corvina and Corvinone are the best grapes for the appassimento, which is the winemaking system we use for the productions of Amarone. Amarone, as you know, is an incredible story. It's a wine that happened by mistake because in the area, the appassimento system, which is the drying of grapes, was used since 2,500 years ago. That's how long we trace it back. But the Amarone, it was making basically a sweet wine called Recioto. And then, you know, in the 40s, by a mistake made by local winemakers, this sweet Recioto was fermenting in the barrel and it became totally dry. So this is how actually Amarone started, and it became a very successful wine in the markets. Valpolicella is roughly 9,000 hectares of vineyards with a productions of roughly 60 million of bottles. And in this 60 million bottles, 15 to 16 millions are Amarone. The Amarone we are presenting tonight is a Reus, which comes from the Classico area, which is more west in the Appalachians. It's 2015 vineyards. And as you can see, basically 80% of the blend is Corvina and Corvinone, plus Rondinella, which is another indigenous varietals, which adds freshness and acidity to the blend, and a 5% of Cabernet. The best way to describe Amarone, but I would say is the best way to describe all wine from Valpolicella, is that cherry finish that you have when you smell the wine and you taste the wine. The aroma is incredible, and it all comes from Corvina and Corvinone. So if you taste the wines from Valpolicella and you don't find that cherry finish, we are in trouble, because that is the major components of the aromatic profile. It's a rich, complex, with a big structures, and most of the time a big alcohol contents, which could go from 16%, 15 to 16%. But because of the softness of the tannins and the roundness and this cherry finish, the alcohol is not is very well integrated. So being such a big structure is considered, I would say, quite a soft and easy to comprehend wine.
Absolutely. I've got a lot of comprehension going on here, Andreas, so thank you.
Thank you, Lars.
All right. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to each of our brilliant panelists for this wonderful educational opportunity. Everybody remember to get your essays in. A grand on the table. That's pretty good. Lynn, do you want to give us a fast review, please, of what the ground rules are and when people are going to be hearing from us?
Yes, thank you, Lars. So once again, we'll be sending out the essay prompt in the next few days by Friday at the latest. Everybody will receive that prompt. in their email. Make sure that info@SOM Foundation is allowed in your inbox. Check your spam filter if you don't get the email. The prompt will be out there by Friday. You'll have until the 25th to submit your essay. Make sure you read the instructions very carefully. And please take the time to go back and review the other webinars that maybe you haven't seen or you didn't pay enough attention to give yourself the best chance. They're all posted on the SOM Journal and SOM Foundation websites. And good luck to you.
Great. And I hope you hear the noise behind me. It's a reminder that I don't live on Long Island. I live on Long Guy land. My landscapers are here again at my back door. But thank you, Lynn. And I want to remind everybody that this has been recorded. So it'll be available shortly on somjournal.com. If you look us up under webinars, it's on our Facebook Live platform as well. And also there'll be links through the somfoundation.com. Printed recap will be in the December-January issue. And once again, thank you to everybody who tuned in, to all our panelists, to Greg, to Lynn from the SOM Foundation, and on behalf of the SOM Journal, SOM Foundation, and National Geographic. Thank you once again, and please join us on November 9th when we address the Southern Hemisphere. Location is key, and sometimes altitude matters. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the day. Ciao. Enjoy your big reds.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Looks good, Joe.
Go White Sox and go White Rocks.